What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be doing a NFL quarterback tier list video. And I know before this video gets started, I know a lot of you guys down below are going to have opinions about this, so let me know down below as we go through this video where you would rank some of these guys. We have an interesting mix of quarterbacks here, so we're going to go through, and this is how I'm going to predict how they're going to play with certain players, and also a mix of how they've played before. So a guy like Caleb Williams, obviously, I'm not sure how he's played in the NFL because he hasn't played in the NFL yet, but I'm going to be doing a bit of projecting and a bit of just what I've seen. So a lot of these projections based off what I've seen already, and then if I think they're going to develop. So Caleb Williams starting off. I think Caleb Williams has a lot of potential. I know there's a lot of people that are starting to hate on him. Most of the reasons, I think, if not all of them, it seems like are outside of football. This guy was fantastic at USC. Last year, the team wasn't very good. The offensive line, not that great. They didn't compete for the national championship like many expected, but Caleb Williams came out. He was the main story. He was the best player in this draft at the quarterback position. And I think he'll be good next year. I think the Bears could have a chance to be able to compete. They went out there, they got everything done, they built up a lot. Like you guys will see, I'll be talking about Caleb Williams a lot more coming up on the channel, as we'll see with him and Rome Odunze. I'm not sure if you guys haven't watched that video yet. Depending on when this comes out, I'll have a video about him and Rome Odunze going into this season. But I think he will be good next year. And it'll be interesting to see how we move these players around later, but right now, I think he'll be good. Next up, Tommy DeVito. He's on the bench. I'm not really thinking much about this. Drake Maye. Drake Maye is an interesting case because I don't think he's going to be good next year. I don't know when he's going to start necessarily too, because there's been a lot of QB controversy, it seems like, for the Patriots very recently. Within the past few days and few weeks, it seems like, just because there's so many different options they could go with. Realistically, I think Drake Maye is the guy. I don't think Joe Milton is going to be out there starting, but I don't think Drake Maye is going to start at the beginning of the season. I think he's going to have to work his way into that starting role. But for now, I think this is a weird spot because I think he's going to be a bridge low tier starter depending on how we see him next year. So I don't think he's going to have a fantastic season. He could prove me wrong, but the main reason is the offense isn't that great. So unless he goes out there and just completely performs out of his league, not saying that he's not a good player, but with what he's given right now, he would have to completely dominate with the guys that he has to go out there and even have like good enough stats, if that makes sense, just because he doesn't have very many options or weapons right now. But I think within the next few years we'll be able to see what will happen with Drake Maye, but I don't think he's going to be the week 1 starter, so that puts him in an interesting spot. Next up, we have Joe Flacco here. I think he's serviceable. I don't expect him to do much, so I guess technically he would be in the bench, but I do think he's serviceable behind Anthony Richardson. I don't think he's going to start, obviously, but I think he's above Tommy DeVito right now. Justin Fields. I have an interesting opinion about Justin Fields. I never really thought he was that great of a player, especially coming out of college. I know everyone was so excited about him at Ohio State, but I never had high expectations for him. Now, who knows what's going to happen over there. So I put him, honestly, this may get some people offended, but I put him in the serviceable tier. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback, and I don't know if he's going to be able to come back from everything that he's gone through within the past few years mentally. And it's an interesting spot to see what's going to happen over there in Pittsburgh, but I don't think he's the guy. Next up, Bryce Young, who had a bad year last year. I'm still going to put him in the bridge to low tier starter. I don't think I can put him any higher than that, and I wouldn't say that he's serviceable. I wouldn't put him on the same tier as Joe Flacco or Justin Fields, who's going to be a backup at this point. I think Bryce Young can still go out there and perform, and I think the Panthers just need to continue to build around him if they want him to be their starting guy. And it seems like they're still bought in on him, which obviously it's only been 1 year, but it's good to see that they're still bought in on their guy that they spent a lot to get. Sam Howell, bench. not much to say there. Patrick Mahomes, superstar, not much to say there either. Still the best quarterback in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers, this one's interesting. Where do I think Aaron Rodgers is at this point in his career? The injury is going to be interesting to see how he comes off of that, but if we do see the Aaron Rodgers that we know, which we haven't seen in a few years now because obviously he was hurt last year, so it's going to be a while since we've actually seen him play football, since he didn't play football at all last year. So I do think that he will be in that Pro Bowl tier. If I'm projecting, like I said before, I think he'll be able to come back. I think they're going to mix in Breece Hall a lot, which is going to take a lot of the pressure off of Rodgers, but he has some decent enough weapons over there where I think he'll be able to go out there and perform and have a good season like we know from Aaron Rodgers. He's one of the most skilled quarterbacks, if not the most skilled quarterback that we've seen. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but one of the most skilled quarterbacks in NFL history. So I wouldn't be too worried about him if I was a Jets fan. I think he'll be able to go back out there and perform at a Pro Bowl type level this year. Bailey Zappi, not much to say there. Now Tua, this is also an interesting spot because many would probably have him between that Pro Bowl and that good tier. Where do I have him personally? Statistically, I think he's Pro Bowl level. I could completely agree with that. But do I think that he's going to return back to that level? It's interesting because obviously he has very good weapons, which makes him a good quarterback. And I can't take that away from him that he has arguably the best receiver in the NFL, and also Jalen Waddle and some other solid guys that they continue to just, seems like the Dolphins just go out there and make sure they get guys every year to fill in those holes. Odell Beckham as well coming in to be the third receiver. We'll see how much he really does, but either way, those top two guys between Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, one of the best duos in the NFL. I do think Tua is a very, very high good tier. I don't think he necessarily has all the skills yet because I've seen him play and I know the stats kind of speak for themselves, but in an instance too, it seems like obviously all of the injuries that he's had in his career are really starting to pile up. So this is a guy that I don't want to wish anything upon him, but it's a guy that his future in the NFL is really up for debate. Now, do I think he's going to be as good as Caleb Williams next year? I think he'll probably end up having better stats. And now this may be a hot take, but I just don't think Tua's really on that same level because the superstar tier, we'll see, there's not very many guys in there. This Pro Bowl tier is about the rest of the guys within that top 10 to 12 area, and I think Tua's just outside of that. I think he's in that top 13 to 17 area, wherever you want to put him. I think, as we'll see, we can go back and change it later, but I do think there's a good amount of guys that I would take above him at this point. Will Levis, interesting spot. I wouldn't put him in the same area as Drake May and Bryce Young right now. I know a lot of people were very excited about Will Levis last year, and he went out and within the games that he played, he put up some decent stats. I'll give him that, but I still haven't seen enough from him to really get too excited. 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions last year, 1,800 yards. Not really too much to get excited about. I would put him in the serviceable spot. I still think he's good enough, but I don't think that's going to stop them from getting a franchise quarterback if they end up with the #1 overall pick, because I think this team is going to be very bad this year with the Titans, especially in that tough division. I don't really see too much to be excited about, and if they have a top 3 pick and they have the pick between Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, whoever else you want to throw in that top tier of quarterback, I don't think Will Levis is stopping you from drafting a quarterback. Russell Wilson, this may be a hot take. I think he's a bridge quarterback to a low tier starter right now. This should be edited so it says low tier right here. I don't think you guys really care too much about that, but Russell Wilson had decent stats last year. I don't think it's really out of the way to say that he can be a good enough quarterback for them next year. Looking at his passing, I think he's a better quarterback, better option right now than Russell Wilson. 26 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. He played well last year. Yes, maybe he didn't have the most yards, but comparing him to a guy like Justin Fields, who had 16 touchdowns in the air and 9 touchdowns on the ground, Russell Wilson is still able to be elusive as well. So I'm not saying he's definitely not on that good tier up here, but I would say that he's in this same area as I do think Bryce Young. This is where it gets a little weird because I do think Bryce Young or Drake May could outperform him this year, but I still think that he is that bridge quarterback. The other two younger guys, obviously. Kyler Murray is in an interesting spot as well because talent-wise, I think he could easily be a Pro Bowl quarterback. Maybe not superstar, but we've seen him perform at very high levels, and he's going to have Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. I'm putting him in the good tier. I know there's a lot of people that may not love this. I know there's probably some people that are saying I'm underrating him as well. Kyler Murray is a very interesting quarterback. I can really tell a lot, I guess, asking people in the NFL that watch the NFL, obviously, religiously or a lot. You can tell a lot based on kind of how they view football in the quarterback position, based on how they think Kyler Murray plays, because statistically and the way he plays throughout the past few years, it seems like, oh, maybe you should give up on him because of his injuries. But the way that he plays is just, I mean, he's going out there and he's playing, maybe not obviously the prime Russell Wilson level, but he's that same category of him, Bryce Young, Russell Wilson, all these smaller guys that can go out there and be agile, go run the ball, make plays on the move. And I still believe in Kyler Murray, and his team, his receiving weapons got even better with, I don't want to guarantee a Hall of Fame player, but a Hall of Fame talent in Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's going to be up there this year in that good category, and I would not be surprised if he puts up stats to be in that Pro Bowl category as well. Jared Goff, I think still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Not a superstar level, but I'm going to put him in this Pro Bowl level. He is the reason why the Lions have been so great. They've had a very good defense, obviously, but Jared Goff is one of the best game managers in the NFL today. He goes out there and he does every single thing that he needs to. He makes all the throws that he needs to, and you don't really see him make mistakes too often. Yes, he had 12 interceptions last year, but it's not like you look at him and see a guy where you would say, oh, well, I have to worry about Jared Goff going out there and throwing multiple interceptions this game. I have to go out there and worry about him making bad reads. This guy goes out there and he does everything he needs to. 4,500 yards last year, second in the NFL, 30 passing touchdowns as well, 67% completion rate. I mean, this guy did everything he needed to do, and I mean, I just think that he's up there with those talents. Maybe not Pro Bowl, maybe he won't make the Pro Bowl, but he will definitely get those stats to be up there in that category. Daniel Jones, he's in an interesting spot. Obviously, I'm a Giants fan, so I may have more hope than the average person would. I think it's fair to put him in this serviceable tier right now. Do I think that he could be up here next year? Maybe. Do I think he's going to keep his job with the Giants? It's really up in the air. It depends on how the team does. But for now, I think I got to put him in the serviceable tier. Trevor Lawrence, a very interesting spot as well, because he has all the talent in the world, but it seems like they just keep falling short every year. He was hurt last year in some of his games, so obviously he didn't end up playing the full season, but 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So depending on how you value things, statistically, he had a good year in some senses, not a great year in others. I don't think he's in this low-tier starter. I think he has the talent, all of the talent in the world to be in the Pro Bowl category, one of the best overall talents that we've seen come out of college in a long time, coming out of Clemson, but I'm putting him in that good tier. Next up, we have Derek Carr, who is in a very interesting spot as well, because the Saints didn't have very many weapons last year, but when you look statistically, almost 3,900 yards, 25 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions, and this was a guy that constantly 4,000 yards every single year. I mean, he obviously had better weapons at the time when he was over there in, I guess technically Oakland, Las Vegas, whatever you want to call it, when he was on the Raiders. But now in New Orleans, not as good. I don't think the team's going to be very good next year. I am going to put him in this bridge low-tier starter spot, but I know these also aren't in order, by the way, so if you see someone who you think, oh, maybe Trevor Lawrence should be above, whatever. I'm not saying Derek Carr is worse than Russell Wilson. I think they're in that same tier right now. which kind of sounds weird when I talk about it too. But do I think Derek Carr is in the same tier as Tua, Caleb Williams, could be next year, Kyler Murray and Trevor Lawrence? No. But do I think Russell Wilson's in the same tier as Joe Flacco, Will Levis, and Justin Fields? No. I don't know. When we talk about quarterbacks, it's definitely weird to get to, but this is just what we have right now. Tyrod Taylor, serviceable, one of the best backups in the NFL. I think he could start on pretty much any team if their starting quarterback is hurt, and that's what I think serviceable is. He could be a starting quarterback in most spots, and I think if Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, I don't think you're worried about Tyrod Taylor being in there because he's a good enough player where he can go in and make those plays, but obviously not lead a team to the playoffs. But he can go in there and be a serviceable backup for you. Kirk Cousins, I think he's in the good tier. Like I said, not in order, but there's a lot of guys that are going to be falling within this spot where we're kind of getting to the point where we're going to see a lot more higher end quarterbacks. But right now, I'm going to keep him in this good tier. But Kirk, one of the better game managers in the NFL, especially comparing him to a guy like Jared Goff. Both of them kind of play that game manager role, which I feel like some people think that that's a bad thing to say, that a QB is a game manager, but at the end of the day, that's what they really are. I mean, there's obviously very different examples of it. A guy like Mahomes is still a game manager, but you see him do all these flashy plays, so if someone called Mahomes a game manager, someone would probably be upset about that, and I guess it's a little different, but Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins, both game managers at the end of the day, and both some of the best in the NFL at it. Lamar Jackson, superstar category. I don't think there's very much to say there. Jordan Love, another interesting guy because it seems like almost out of nowhere, everyone who said that Jordan Love maybe shouldn't even be on this team, they should move on from Jordan Love, he's not going to be that good, just completely a switch just flipped the last few games of last season, and now Jordan Love is suddenly in the early MVP candidate talks because he had a few good games at the end of last season. And I don't want to seem like I'm hating against Jordan Love, but I think he has completely become very overrated within the past few months since the end of last season, which I know a lot of people are going to be very upset about that, but he went out there and he did have some good stats last year, but I think people are very quick to forget about the teams that they went up against at the end of last season. The Giants, the Bucks, the Panthers, the Vikings, and the Bears at the end of the season. And yes, he put up really good stats, but we can't just ignore how he also played at the beginning of last season. Yeah, he had a good game against the Bears and the Falcons to start the season, but then that Saints, Lions, Raiders, Broncos, Vikings stretch, he 2 picks against the Steelers as well. I don't want to come off like I'm hating on this guy and saying that he's not that good, but I don't think that I'm not as high as other people would say, I guess, at this point. So I'm going to put him in the good tier, but I do need to see a little bit from him because he had a really mixed bag last year of games. If you actually go and watch the games back, watching some of those games as well too, especially in prime time, and just watching them during the day as well, I think Jordan Love has become very overrated within the past few months. But I do think that he has the talent to be out there and become a Pro Bowl quarterback, but I do want to pump the brakes on it a little bit, and I know this will probably be one of the more controversial rankings on this tier list just because it seems like everyone is in love with Jordan Love right now. Funny enough to say, but I just want to pump the brakes a little bit on it. Brock Purdy, I know a lot of people have opinions on him. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a game manager as well, in that same category as a guy like Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins. I don't think he has as much skill as a guy like Jared Goff, which might be a hot take to some people, but I don't know. Brock Purdy has made all the throws that he needs to, but at the end of the day, I just don't think he's as good of a quarterback as a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Jared Goff is right now, which some people might be upset about that, but that's just how I feel right now. Matthew Stafford, another guy. I think Matthew Stafford is probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in NFL history. I know people are going to be upset that I put him over Brock Purdy. I think the beauty of ranking quarterbacks is there's so much to look at. We can look at the stats all we want, but when we rank quarterbacks, everyone has a different ranking. Some people purely based on stats, some people based off the eye test completely, which is also another good way to go, but obviously that doesn't tell you everything. But Matthew Stafford, when we're talking about the game managers as well, another perfect example of that. Justin Herbert has been good the past few years, hasn't taken that leap to be the MVP talent that many of us expected him to get to, but I think overall, I'm just looking here as well. Okay, never mind. I had a little brain fart when I saw this Wilson on the Broncos. Obviously, this is Zach Wilson. Let me just put him in the bench real quick. That was messing me up, but Justin Herbert is a guy that we all expect to kind of take that leap to be a superstar, and I don't think anyone would really bat an eye. I still do think if they can go out and get some good guys, I think they're still lacking in that wide receiver department, losing most of their guys. I kind of expected them to take one in the draft this year, but they're building up that O-line, trying to protect Justin Herbert. I think skill-wise, I'm going to put him in the Pro Bowl spot. Like I said, I'm projecting. I think he's going to have a good year. I think they're going to be able to go in there this year with the help of Joe Alt and everyone else they got in the draft, having a sneaky good draft this year, in my opinion, and also having Jim Harbaugh, who knows how to win. I think he'll be able to help bring Justin Herbert back up into where we kind of expected him to be. Aiden O'Connell, one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen play football, not good at football. Geno Smith, I think he's a bridge quarterback. I still think they're kind of waiting to find the guy of the future over there in Seattle. Jaden Daniels, we will move him kind of towards the back because I do see a bunch of rookies over here, so we'll just fly through those at the end. Jalen Hurts, I don't love Jalen Hurts. I think he had a very good year when they made the playoffs. Obviously, not the playoffs. When they went to the Super Bowl, almost won it. You can chalk that up to the refs or whatever you want. He didn't have a good year last year. He did have a lot of rushing touchdowns, but obviously you have to take that into the count. But a lot of them from the 1 yard line or wherever, from the tush push. So cancel me if you want for getting upset about that. But Jalen Hurts, not a good quarterback last year statistically throwing the ball. 23 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. Not a good ratio there, but I would still put him in this good tier. I think if you asked me a few years ago, he would be in that Pro Bowl tier, but I don't know. He's in this very weird limbo state where there's so many quarterbacks right now. There's not very many. I'll throw Joe Burrow up here. He doesn't really need to be talked about as much. There's not very many in this superstar category. When we get to that top 10-ish area, it gets a little more hairy, but from 10 to 22-ish, there's so many guys that have either a lot of potential or have had good years in the past that haven't produced recently. Guys like Jordan Love, who I think you could argue could be higher, but haven't came out yet and really had their coming out party. Last year he was good, but if he comes out this year again and does even better, then I think he's going to be able to get into that category above him. But there's so many guys within this area, so it kind of makes it really hard. Deshaun Watson, I don't even know where I put a guy like Deshaun Watson at this point. I still think he's serviceable. I don't think he's as bad as a guy like Aiden O'Connell or Bailey Zappi or Tommy DeVito. So, I don't know. He's weird, in a weird spot. Anthony Richardson, also a guy where I think he could be really good this year, and if we're projecting, I'm going to put him in this good category, which some people might be upset about, but I think he's going to be able to go out there and have a good year for himself with the Colts. They went out and got A.D. Mitchell in the draft, who was one of my favorite players in this draft as well. They also have a very, very solid wide receiver core that they've already built the past few years, besides getting A.D. Mitchell this year. So I think he's going to, like I said, I'm projecting a little bit this season, so I think he's going to be able to make his way into that good tier. Sam Darnold, serviceable, I guess, maybe even below that. I'll just keep him here. CJ Stroud. This is where you can comment down below. This is maybe where the glazing starts, but I think CJ Stroud's going to go out there and perform at a top 5 MVP voting level this year. I think he will be able, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. Like I said, he only had 1 year last year. Oh, why did you say Jordan Love isn't as good as him? But the things that we saw from CJ Stroud last year are things that you can't really go out there, and I don't think he can really mess up and the team also got better getting Stephon Diggs, and their draft was also good this year. The defense got even better as well, which obviously some may say, oh, well, that doesn't affect him, but hand in hand, the team got better overall. I think CJ Stroud projecting is going to be playing in that Pro Bowl level. I think you give him 2 years and he'll be up there in that superstar level as well. And I think he's going to have a fantastic season. So I know there's some people that may be upset about that, but it seems like a lot of people kind of just agree that CJ Stroud, after last year having a historic rookie season, is kind of in that close to top 10 category right now. Josh Allen, I'm keeping him in the superstar category for now because I've seen a lot of great things from him, but it just seems like the past few seasons, this Bills team is starting to fall apart slowly. I don't know how good they're going to be within the next few years. I guess that's a conversation for a different day, but I don't think it's obviously, at the end of the day, I don't think it's Josh Allen's fault because he has all the skill in the world, but it seems like this Bills team is falling apart right in front of our eyes. Maybe something will change this year, but if I was a Bills fan, I don't know, I'd be a little nervous because it just feels like sometimes you can just feel throughout the past few seasons when a team's kind of lost their chance and there's teams that have been passing them. Also looking at this as well, I think the 4 superstar quarterbacks being in the AFC is kind of interesting as well. We're also looking at guys on the brink, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers kind of interesting as well, but a lot of good quarterbacks in the AFC, and that's what I'm talking about. It seems like the Bills' chances have kind of passed by them. Their window has been closing the past few seasons, so unless they go out there and do something drastic, I don't know. I don't want to say Josh Allen's getting traded, obviously, or anything like that, but I don't know. It just seems like there's something going on in the Bills organization, and it seems like this team is slowly falling apart in front of our eyes. Dak Prescott, one of the most interesting quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm putting him in the Pro Bowl category, and I think that speaks a lot as a Giants fan to put Dak Prescott in there. Last year, 36 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He got those interceptions down. He was at a higher level before he got hurt. He came back 4,500 yards as well. He is a very talented quarterback, and I hate to admit that as a Giants fan, but at the end of the day, it's hard to ignore him. Baker Mayfield, who had a career resurgence last season with the Buccaneers. Do I think he's going to do it again? I don't know. I'm going to keep him below this tier because I don't, like I said, I'm projecting. I think he's going to have a little bit of a down year compared to last season. So I don't think I can really have him up in the same category as these guys, but I hope he does. Let me say that because I'm a fan of Baker Mayfield, and it's kind of cool to see a resurgence like that. Michael Penix, he's going in the bench because I don't think he's going to play next year unless Kirk Cousins does something, which obviously I don't want to wish an injury on him, but I don't think Michael Penix is going to play at all next year because they signed Kirk Cousins to a long-term deal, and Michael Penix is already a little older, so it's interesting he's going to sit on the bench. People will say, oh, well, Jordan Love sat on the bench, but Michael Penix is pretty old right now, so if he's going to sit on the bench for multiple years, I don't know. I don't think he's going to play next year. I'm glad I don't have to worry about it. I'm not a Falcons fan. Interesting selection overall, but we can skip by that. JJ McCarthy, I'm a certified JJ McCarthy hater. I don't think he's going to have a good season next year, and maybe my bias is slipping in here, but I don't know. I just don't think he's that good of a quarterback, and I think he's going to start. I think he's going to play a good amount, obviously, next year. I don't know if he's projected to start week 1 or not, where he'll be. I wouldn't be surprised if he beats out Sam Darnold in the preseason. I don't know if it's already confirmed or not. I haven't really paid as much attention to the Vikings quarterback situation yet, which I probably should. Let me know down below, guys, if you were a Vikings fan, if McCarthy's kind of already locked into that spot or if he has to win it out, but I'll figure that out. But I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to have a great season next year. So it's really hard because do I think he's going to be in the same area? I think he could be in the same area as a guy like Will Levis next year. Justin Fields is interesting too because I think he could still produce next year. Daniel Jones, an interesting guy. He could still produce next year. I guess I'll leave him here, but I'll leave that guy up to you guys in the comments below. I just don't think JJ McCarthy's that good of a quarterback. And I mean, you guys can let me know down below what you think about that. But Jayden Daniels, I think, is going to have a low-tier starter type season next year. I think he's going to be good, but he's not going to be in the same level of guys up here. I think within the next few years, if they continue to build this Washington team up, he has enough talent to be able to get up there. But next year, he's not a bridge quarterback, obviously. I think he can be a low-tier starter. I think he's going to have a similar-ish season to Bryce Young next year. I think they're both going to be good, but not great, kind of like Derek Carr will be. Bo Nix, this one's even weirder to rank because do I think Bo Nix is going to have as good of a season as like a guy like Jayden Daniels or closer to a guy like J.J. McCarthy next year? I'm going to leave him in this serviceable spot. I don't think he's going to be that good. I don't think the Broncos are going to be that great. So, I don't know. He's kind of in a weird spot too. But let me know down below what you guys think. I think the main guys to look at here that I'm sure people will probably be upset about are guys like Jordan Love. Jalen Hurts, I don't think as much because people aren't that upset. But Jordan Love, Tua, Brock Purdy, I think are going to be the three most interesting guys because there's a lot of people that have them in their top 10. There's a lot of people that have them outside. I think these four have solidified themselves as the four best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't see much debate there. After that, it gets a little interesting because essentially this is my top 10 here, and then this is kind of my, these aren't in exact order, but kind of 11, 12, 13 that I was talking about before, right outside the top 10. But let me know down below what you guys think, because I know at least you're going to disagree with at least one of these quarterbacks. I'm sure even more than that. So just let me know down below what you guys think and what you guys want to see next. Probably maybe running back, maybe wide receiver. Let me know. I'll see you guys in the next one.